You ever look at someone you love and realize they stopped loving you back a long time ago, but you stay. You hold on to the memories, convincing yourself it's just a rough patch. You tell yourself that if you love them harder, if you just give it more time, maybe, just maybe, they'll come back to you. But deep down, you feel it, don't you? The laughter has faded, the conversations feel forced, and the person you used to be, they're slipping away. You find yourself waiting for a love that once felt effortless, now feeling like a stranger in your own relationship. So now, the real question is, how do you know when it's time to walk away? No sugarcoating, no cliches, just the truth you've been avoiding. Let's talk about it. Number 1, you feel more alone with them than without them. Loneliness isn't just about being alone. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, and disconnected, even when you're sitting right next to the person who's supposed to be your partner. At first, you might brush it off. You tell yourself, it's just a phase. We're both busy, things will get better. But deep down, that empty feeling lingers. Conversations feel forced, laughter feels rare, and even the silence between you doesn't feel comfortable anymore. It feels heavy. You start to notice that you'd rather sit alone in your car for a few extra minutes before walking into the house. You find yourself scrolling mindlessly on your phone, avoiding eye contact, avoiding small talk, avoiding the reality that you don't feel connected anymore. Maybe you even try to bring it up, but every time you do, you're met with defensiveness, indifference, or worst of all, a fake reassurance that does nothing to actually fix the problem. And then it hits you. You feel more alone with them than you do when you're actually by yourself. That's a dangerous place to be. Because love is supposed to be a refuge, not a source of isolation. A relationship should feel like home, not like a house where you and a stranger coexist under the same roof. When you're with the right person, even silence feels warm. But when you're with the wrong one, even words feel empty. Maybe you've started making excuses to be away from them. You say yes to extra shifts at work, take the long way home, or suddenly prefer running errands alone. Not because you don't care about them, but because being around them drains you more than it fulfills you. And that's the biggest sign of all. Love is meant to be a connection, not a constant effort to bridge an invisible gap. If you feel lonelier in your relationship than you do in your own company, then ask yourself, are you really in a relationship at all? Or are you just holding on to the memory of what it used to be? Number 2, they don't respect you anymore. Respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship. When it starts to fade, everything else crumbles with it. At first, it's subtle. Maybe they interrupt you mid-sentence or roll their eyes when you share something important. Small things, easy to brush off. But over time, those little dismissals add up. They stop listening when you speak, don't acknowledge your feelings, and worst of all, they make you feel like your thoughts, opinions, and presence don't matter anymore. You start questioning yourself. Am I overreacting? But deep down, you know, this isn't how love is supposed to feel. Respect isn't just about words, it's about actions. The way they treat you in private, how they talk about you to others, the way they make decisions that affect both of you without considering your input. It's about how they react when you're vulnerable, whether they offer comfort or make you feel small. Maybe they mock your dreams, belittle your achievements, or make jokes at your expense. At first, you laugh along thinking it's harmless, but over time, it eats away at your self-worth. You start walking on eggshells, afraid to express yourself because you know they'll dismiss you, argue, or make you feel like an inconvenience. Then there's the way they handle conflict. A partner who respects you will argue fairly. They'll listen, try to understand, and work through disagreements with care. But when respect is gone, fights become toxic. They cut you down, ignore your boundaries, or use manipulation to make you feel like you're always the problem. Suddenly, you're apologizing for things that aren't even your fault, just to keep the peace. You find yourself feeling drained, anxious, and constantly questioning where you stand. And let's talk about how they treat you in front of others. A lack of respect doesn't just show up behind closed doors, it spills into public spaces. Maybe they talk over you in conversations, dismiss your opinions like they don't matter, or worse, make degrading comments about you in front of friends or family. You feel invisible, unheard, like you're just there, but not valued. The person who once admired you now acts like you're an afterthought. The hardest part? Sometimes they'll be nice again, just enough to keep you hoping. A sweet gesture, an apology, a reminder of who they used to be. But respect isn't something that comes and goes. It's either there or it's not. And when it's not, love alone isn't enough to hold the relationship together. Because love without respect isn't love. It's control, convenience, or worse, obligation. So ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt valued in this relationship? When was the last time they looked at you with admiration instead of indifference? If you can't remember, or if you're making excuses for their behavior, it might be time to face the truth. A relationship without respect isn't a relationship worth saving. Number 3, the effort is one-sided. A relationship is supposed to be a two-way street. It's about give and take, about mutual investment, about both people putting in the work to keep the connection strong. But when you're the only one trying, when you're the only one planning dates, checking in, making sacrifices, initiating conversations, or even just showing basic care, it stops being a partnership. It starts feeling like a chore, a burden, a job you never signed up for. And the worst part, it drains you, emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically, because love, real love, isn't supposed to feel this exhausting. At first, you might make excuses for them. They're just busy. They're stressed. They'll change. But deep down, you know that if they truly cared, if they truly valued you, they would make an effort. It doesn't take a grand gesture. It doesn't require fancy gifts or over-the-top declarations. It's about the little things, checking in to see how your day was, remembering things that matter to you, putting in the same energy you put in. But when the effort is one-sided, those little things disappear. Suddenly, you're the one always reaching out first, always adjusting, always waiting for them to show up in ways they never do. And let's be real, love shouldn't feel like begging. You shouldn't have to constantly remind someone to love you, to appreciate you, to see you, because if they truly wanted to, they would. It's that simple. The painful truth is that when the effort is one-sided, what you actually have isn't love. It's an attachment, a habit, maybe even a fear of being alone. But it's not love. Love is two people showing up for each other, not one person carrying the entire weight of the relationship while the other barely notices. Think about it. If you stopped putting in the effort today, would the relationship still exist? Would they even notice? If the answer is no, then that tells you everything you need to know. You're not in a relationship. You're in a situation where you're the only one fighting for something that's already broken, and that's not fair to you. You deserve more. You deserve someone who matches your effort, who meets you halfway, who makes you feel like you're not in this alone. And if you're not getting that, maybe it's time to stop trying so hard for someone who wouldn't even try for you. Number 4. You're making excuses for their behavior. You tell yourself they didn't mean it, that they were just tired, stressed, or having a bad day. Maybe they didn't call you back for the 3rd night in a row, but hey, they must be really busy, right? They snapped at you in public, but they're just going through a rough time. You explain away their coldness, their lack of effort, their broken promises, because deep down, facing the truth feels too painful. But here's the thing. Love isn't about finding new ways to justify disrespect. When you love someone, it's natural to want to see the best in them. You remember the good moments, the times they made you laugh, the sweet words they whispered when everything felt perfect. But slowly, without even realizing it, you start covering up the cracks. You downplay the hurt. You ignore the sinking feeling in your chest. And before you know it, you've become an expert in making excuses for things that shouldn't need explaining. Maybe your friends have noticed. Maybe they've pointed out how they don't like the way your partner talks to you, or how they never seem to show up when you need them. And what do? You defend them. They're just not good at expressing emotions. They have a lot on their plate. They love me. They're just going through something. But if someone truly loves you, shouldn't their actions show it? Shouldn't love feel like a safe place, not a constant battle of justifying why you're being treated poorly? It's hard to admit when someone isn't who we thought they were. It's painful to accept that the person we've invested so much in might not be capable of giving us the love we deserve. But making excuses won't change the reality. It won't turn neglect into care. It won't turn broken promises into reliability. It won't turn emotional distance into genuine connection. And let's be honest, if the roles were reversed, would they do the same for you? If you constantly hurt them, ignored their needs and failed to show up, would they fight to justify your actions, or would they simply walk away? Love should never require you to shrink yourself, silence your needs, or pretend that mistreatment is just a misunderstanding. The moment you realize you're working harder to defend their actions than they are to change them, that's the moment you need to ask yourself, is this really love or just fear of letting go? Number 5, your gut is screaming at you. Sometimes the loudest voice we hear is the one coming from deep inside us, far louder than any outside opinions or rational thoughts. It's that gut feeling, that instinctual force that seems to rise up when something just doesn't feel right. You know what I'm talking about. The unease that sits in the pit of your stomach when something's off, even when everything else on the surface appears fine. That gut instinct isn't just a passing thought. It's your internal compass trying to point you toward what's true and away from what's not serving you. It can be easy to dismiss these feelings, especially when everything around you seems to suggest otherwise. But if you start to notice this sensation over and over again, it's time to pay attention. Our intuition has a way of picking up on things that we might not be consciously aware of. Maybe your partner's actions don't match their words, or you're feeling emotionally drained even when you've tried to push through. The gut feeling is often a warning sign of misalignment. It's a reminder that there's something deeper happening, something you can't ignore, no matter how many times you push it down. Trusting your gut doesn't mean acting impulsively or making decisions in the heat of the moment. It's about tuning into that quiet whisper that's been nagging at you for a while and giving yourself the space to listen. You might be facing subtle red flags that you've learned to tolerate, or certain behaviors that have started to feel more off than usual. You might even catch yourself second-guessing your partner's motives or your own feelings more often. It's not a coincidence. Your gut is trying to get your attention. It's your inner wisdom telling you that something isn't right, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. When we ignore our gut feelings, we risk burying the truth and staying in situations that don't align with our values or needs. It's easy to tell yourself that everything will be okay, that things will change, or that you're overthinking it. But deep down, you know when you're ignoring that inner voice. Your gut doesn't lie. If you're constantly feeling anxious or uncertain in your relationship, it's not just a random occurrence. Your body is responding to an environment that isn't nurturing your peace, and that's where the real danger lies. Over time, Ignoring that inner scream can lead to resentment, emotional exhaustion, and confusion. Listen, it's not about making rash decisions or leaving without reason, but if you're feeling this constant pull of discomfort, it might be time to step back and reevaluate what your gut is telling you. Whether it's telling you that trust has been broken, that your emotional needs are not being met, or that the relationship is no longer growing in a healthy direction, your intuition is a guide you can't afford to ignore. It's your internal alarm system signaling that it's time to look deeper. Trust that inner voice. The more you listen, the clearer the path will become. Number 6, you keep hoping they'll change. When you're in a relationship and things aren't working out, one of the most common traps people fall into is the belief that their partner will eventually change. You keep telling yourself that someday they will evolve into the person you envision, the person who will meet all your needs and fix all the problems you've been facing. It's a story you play in your mind, trying to hold on to the possibility of a transformation. But here's the hard truth. People rarely change. At least not in the ways we want them to. Let's be real for a second. Relationships thrive on the foundation of mutual growth, but expecting someone to completely alter their core personality, values, or habits for you is asking for a miracle. We often fall in love with the potential of a person rather than who they actually are. This idealization can be dangerous, because you're setting yourself up for endless disappointment when they don't meet those expectations. If your partner hasn't changed in the ways you've hoped, it's not because they don't care about you. It's because they may simply be incapable of the change you're hoping for, or they might not want it for themselves. A lot of times, we keep hanging on, waiting for that pivotal moment when they'll finally become who we wish they would be. But it's a never-ending cycle of frustration. It's draining. Instead of seeing them for who they are right now, you're stuck in this fantasy of the future you want. But the reality is, if you've communicated your needs and they haven't made any efforts to meet them, then it's time to ask yourself, why am I waiting? And here's another kicker. By continuing to hope for change, you're not accepting the person standing in front of you. You're building a relationship with an illusion, not the real human being. You may even start to lose sight of your own wants and needs, pushing them aside because you're too busy waiting for something that might never come. This can lead to resentment, emotional exhaustion, and eventually the erosion of any love you might still have left. It's important to recognize when it's time to let go of the hope that someone will change. It's not about giving up on love. It's about acknowledging that you deserve a partner who meets you where you are, someone who is ready to build a future with you, not someone who might or might not become the person you need them to be down the line. When you let go of this hope, you free yourself to find the love that is actually right for you, without constantly living in the shadow of what could be. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you've invested time, energy, and emotions into the relationship. But the truth is, no amount of wishing will transform them into someone else. It's time to stop trying to change the person you're with and focus on whether or not they're the right person for you, just as they are. And if they're not, that's okay. You don't have to settle. Sometimes, the greatest form of love you can give yourself is knowing when to walk away and trusting that by doing so, you're making room for something better. Number 7. You're not happy anymore. At some point, you may start feeling an unsettling emptiness that you can't quite explain. You wake up and the day feels longer than it should, not because of anything external, but because of how your heart feels inside. You realize that the joy you once found in your partner, in your relationship, has faded. It's like a dim light that once illuminated your world, now barely flickering. You begin to ask yourself questions you never thought you'd ask, like, when was the last time I truly felt happy with this person? Or, when did things start feeling so heavy? You don't recognize the version of yourself you've become when you're with them, as if you've lost the spark that made you feel alive. When you're constantly in a state of discomfort or sadness, even during the moments you should be enjoying, something isn't right. The thing about happiness is that it's a feeling that's supposed to flow naturally. It's not something you force. When that natural flow is gone, it's a sign that the connection between you and your partner might be breaking down. It's not about the occasional disagreements or frustrations that every relationship faces. Those are normal. It's about feeling like you're living in a constant state of dissatisfaction. You may tell yourself that you're just going through a phase or that things will get better, but deep down, you know it's been like this for too long. It can be incredibly difficult to confront this reality. You may feel guilty or like you're betraying the love you once had, but here's the truth. Staying in a relationship where happiness no longer exists isn't fair to you or your partner. Love should not be draining, it should be uplifting. If you constantly feel drained, unfulfilled, or emotionally distant, it may be time to seriously evaluate whether this relationship is giving you what you need. You might try to hold on thinking that it's just a bad patch or that the good times outweigh the bad, but when the bad starts to outweigh the good more often than not, it's a sign you can't ignore. You may also notice that you've started avoiding your partner, not because of anything they've done, but because the thought of spending time with them no longer excites you. When you'd rather be anywhere but with the person you're supposed to love, that's a stark indicator that something is missing. The connection feels cold, distant. You could be sitting in the same room, but you're miles apart emotionally. At this point, it's important to ask yourself if you're staying out of obligation, fear of being alone, or a false hope that things will change on their own. Happiness shouldn't be a distant memory or a dream. It should be something you can experience in the present moment. You deserve to feel joy, fulfillment, and peace in a relationship, not just because you're settling, but because both of you are actively contributing to each other's happiness. And here's the kicker. It's not about blaming anyone or trying to pinpoint who's at fault. Sometimes people just grow apart. Sometimes life changes, and so do people. A relationship that once brought happiness can transform into something that feels more like a chore, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a failure or a bad person. It means you're becoming self-aware enough to know when it's time to step away and prioritize your emotional health. Life is too short to live in a constant state of unhappiness when you have the power to change it. You owe it to yourself to recognize when happiness is no longer part of the equation and when it's time to walk away for the sake of your peace. Trust your instincts. They know when something isn't right, even when you try to convince yourself otherwise. Leaving isn't easy, but staying in a place that keeps you unhappy is much harder in the long run. Number 8. Make peace with your decision. Making the decision to leave a relationship is one of the toughest choices you can ever make. But once you've decided that it's the best path for your happiness and well-being, it's important to find a way to make peace with it. It's so easy to get caught in the whirlpool of guilt, second-guessing, and what-ifs, but these emotions won't serve you. They only keep you tied to the past and prevent you from moving forward with clarity and self-compassion. When you finally let go of something that isn't working, you are not failing or abandoning anyone. You are making a conscious choice to prioritize your own growth and mental peace. No matter how much love and effort you've poured into the relationship, there comes a time when it's more about preserving your mental health than holding on to something that no longer aligns with who you are. It's important to recognize that being in a toxic or stagnant relationship doesn't help anyone, not you, not the other person, and certainly not the love you once shared. One of the hardest parts about walking away is the emotional aftermath. The guilt can feel suffocating, and the fear of being alone can cloud your judgment. However, it's crucial to understand that making peace with your decision starts with accepting the uncomfortable feelings. Yes, leaving will hurt, but staying in something that no longer serves you will eventually hurt you even more. Making peace with your decision is not about erasing the pain, but about understanding that the pain is part of the healing process. Every moment of discomfort is a step closer to becoming the person you are meant to be. Stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. Allow yourself to feel the sadness and the grief of the loss, but don't let those feelings control you. In time, the emotional weight will lighten. If you've left the relationship for your own well-being, you are allowed to stand firm in that choice, without constantly questioning if you did the right thing. The truth is, if it felt right in your gut, it probably was. The second guessing often stems from a place of insecurity or fear of being judged by others. But you are not living your life for anyone else. You are living it for yourself. One practice that can help in making peace with the decision is reflecting on the reasons that led you to this point. Take time to acknowledge the unhealthy patterns, the unmet needs, and the emotional toll that the relationship may have taken on you. Then remind yourself that choosing peace over chaos, love over fear, and self-respect over self-sacrifice is an act of courage. It's okay to walk away from something that doesn't nurture your soul, even if it feels like a loss. In the grand scheme of life, it's a necessary step toward finding true happiness and fulfillment. At the end of the day, your happiness, your peace of mind, and your well-being should be at the forefront of your decisions. Making peace with the decision to leave a relationship isn't about convincing yourself that everything was perfect before or that you did it without any pain. It's about embracing the truth that sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and the other person involved. Trust that your decision is a gift, not just to yourself, but also to the future you're about to create, one that's healthier, more aligned with who you are, and filled with possibilities. Number 9, plan your exit. When it comes to deciding whether it's time to leave a relationship, the idea of planning your exit might seem counterintuitive. Relationships are meant to be emotional, fluid, and often unpredictable. However, this doesn't mean we should let our emotions guide us into making impulsive decisions. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do for yourself and the person you care about is to step away. The question is not whether you want to leave right now, but how you can leave in a way that's respectful, clear, and constructive for both parties. Planning your exit means recognizing that when a relationship has reached its breaking point, it's not just about walking out the door and disappearing. It's about preparing yourself mentally and emotionally. You've probably been in the relationship long enough to understand your partner's needs and triggers, so when you're thinking about leaving, it's vital to approach the situation with empathy, while also staying true to your own boundaries and needs. It starts with self-reflection. Are you staying in this relationship because you feel you have no other choice, or because you think things will magically get better? The first step in planning your exit is acknowledging whether you're holding on out of comfort, fear of the unknown, or a belief that the situation will change without any active effort from both sides. If the relationship no longer serves either of your needs, then it's important to take ownership of that realization. You can't change a relationship by staying in it out of obligation. When you start to plan your exit, one of the most important aspects is timing. Rushing into a breakup, especially in a heated moment, rarely yields the best outcome. It's not about delaying the inevitable. It's about recognizing the right moment when the conversation can be had calmly and respectfully. Planning might involve waiting for the right emotional and mental state to have this difficult conversation. When emotions are running high, you risk saying things you don't mean, or worse, escalating a conflict that could have been avoided. Part of this planning process involves setting emotional boundaries and preparing yourself for a range of responses from your partner. You've likely spent a lot of time thinking about the decision, but for your partner, the news may come as a shock, and they might react with anger, sadness, or confusion. Being prepared for their emotional response will help you maintain your composure and stay firm in your decision. It's important to stay clear in your communication and avoid blaming them or making them feel like they've failed you. Breakups can be messy, but you can make them less painful by respecting both parties' dignity. Another critical piece of this planning process is logistical. If you live together, have joint financial responsibilities, or share mutual connections, the exit will require more than just an emotional shift. It'll need a practical approach too. Work out the details ahead of time. Where will you live after the breakup? How will you divide shared property or finances? Who will keep the pets or handle any shared social obligations? These logistical aspects can easily become sources of further conflict, so approaching them with care is key to a smoother transition. Planning your exit doesn't mean you have to have all the answers immediately. Sometimes you need to give yourself permission to take some time to figure out what comes next. This could involve taking a break to reflect on your feelings more deeply or seeking professional guidance from a counselor. Remember, leaving a relationship doesn't automatically mean that you'll have it all figured out. It's okay to need time to find clarity. Lastly, as you plan your exit, think about the aftermath. A breakup is rarely easy, and the emotional repercussions can linger. Give yourself permission to grieve and allow yourself to heal before jumping into another relationship. Take the time to reconnect with who you are outside of the relationship, because your well-being should always come first. Your journey forward doesn't have to be rushed. It's about healing and rediscovering yourself. The idea of planning your exit isn't just about leaving. It's about doing so with a sense of respect and understanding for both yourself and the other person involved. It's about ensuring that when the relationship ends, it's not with bitterness or regret, but with a sense of closure and peace. Number 10. Cut contact, at least for a while. Sometimes the most powerful step you can take in a relationship that's become toxic or stagnant is to cut contact, even if it's only for a short time. It might sound extreme, but when emotions are running high and communication feels like it's only making things worse, a temporary break can offer much-needed clarity. We live in a world where constant access to one another has become the norm, thanks to social media, text messages, and even those ever-constant phone calls. But what if stepping away is exactly what you need to breathe, to reflect, to rediscover yourself outside of the dynamics of the relationship? It's easy to fall into a cycle of arguments, confusion, and emotional turbulence, especially when there's no time to process what's actually happening. Cutting contact doesn't necessarily mean ending things. It means giving yourself the space to heal, think, and reassess whether you truly want to continue down the path you're on. When we're constantly in touch with someone, our thoughts are clouded by their perspective, and we lose sight of our own. Taking a break allows you to step back and view the relationship from a healthier distance. It's about getting out of the bubble and realizing what you need, separate from the noise of constant interaction. Maybe you've been ignoring red flags because you're so deeply entwined in each other's lives. A break helps you see those flags for what they are. It also gives you room to grieve, if necessary, without the constant pressure of feeling like you need to explain yourself or justify your emotions. It's hard to hear your own voice when you're always trying to hear theirs. When you cut contact, you also create the opportunity for them to experience a taste of what it would be like without you around. Sometimes, It's in the absence that the true weight of the relationship reveals itself. Does the space make them realize they miss you and want to make things work? Or do they simply move on, as though your presence was never essential? These are tough questions, but without cutting contact, you may never know the answers. However, it's important to remember that cutting contact doesn't mean playing games. It's not about punishment or trying to manipulate emotions. It's about taking a step back for self-preservation and mental clarity. If you've tried everything else, therapy, communication, giving your partner the benefit of the doubt, and still find yourself drained and uncertain, a break might be the reset button you need. It's a moment of self-love and respect, where you show yourself that you matter enough to choose peace over constant drama. And in that peace, you'll find the truth. You'll discover whether the relationship is worth returning to, or if it's time to close the chapter and walk away. While you're taking this time apart, don't use it as an excuse to dwell in negativity. Use the space to grow, to reflect on your needs, and to reconnect with the parts of yourself that might have been lost in the shuffle. This isn't just about the other person. It's about you reclaiming your voice and your worth. Whether it leads to reconciliation or an amicable separation, cutting contact can help you see the relationship for what it truly is, not just what you want it to be. In the end, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and your partner, is to take a step back. It might feel uncomfortable, even scary, but it's a necessary part of figuring out whether you're on the right path together or if it's time to go your separate ways. Number 11, rebuild you. In every relationship, the first person you have to care for is yourself. When things fall apart and you're standing at a crossroads, it can be easy to lose sight of who you are, of the version of yourself that existed before the emotional weight started pulling you down. The truth is, you can't be fully present for anyone else unless you're first strong and whole for yourself. So, when it's time to leave a relationship, the journey doesn't end with simply walking away. It begins with rebuilding yourself, with a deep understanding that your growth and well-being should be at the center of your next chapter. It starts with an honest reflection, digging into the emotional wreckage to understand what you need to heal. Take the time to grieve, not just for the loss of the relationship, but for the parts of you that may have been lost or overlooked during the course of it. Recognize the areas where you gave too much and left little room for yourself. Rebuilding doesn't mean just moving on from the pain. It means confronting it, owning it, and deciding that you're worth more than the circumstances that led you here. It's in the acceptance of your own imperfections, your own weaknesses, that your power is restored. Let go of the need to be perfect, to be flawless in the eyes of others, because rebuilding means embracing all of you, the messy, the broken, the beautiful, and the whole. After the storm of emotion, you must take practical steps to rebuild, and it starts with your inner foundation. What do you want for your future? Where do you see yourself thriving, not just surviving? Reconnect with those passions and desires that you buried for the sake of the relationship. What was it that lit you up before? Maybe it's painting, reading, dancing, traveling. Whatever it was, give it a place again. Reconnect with your values too, those deep-seated beliefs that make you who you are. It's time to honor them, even if they were pushed to the side. Rebuild your confidence, your peace, and your strength from within, slowly piecing yourself back together like a mosaic, one choice at a time. And remember, part of rebuilding is also about creating boundaries. A relationship may have drained you, left you feeling smaller or weaker. You have to set new boundaries, not only with others, but also with yourself. Stop allowing negativity or self-doubt to invade your space. Let go of toxic thoughts and habits that are no longer serving you. Set standards for what you will accept moving forward, not just from others, but from yourself too. You are not the same person you were when you entered the relationship. You've grown, you've evolved, and you need to honor that new version of yourself. Lastly, rebuilding you is an ongoing process, not a quick fix. It requires patience, compassion, and a refusal to settle for less than you deserve. It means constantly checking in with yourself, understanding your needs, and not being afraid to ask for what you need from life. Take your time to heal, and remember that it's okay to take it slow. Rebuilding is about progression, not perfection. Every step forward is a victory, even if it's small. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that the person you've rebuilt is stronger, wiser, and more aware of their own worth. Leaving isn't the end. It's a beginning. It's a chance to rediscover yourself, to build a life that makes you excited to wake up in the morning. So, if you're sitting there, wondering if it's time, if your heart is already halfway out the door, you already know the answer. Now all that's left is to take that first step. If this video hit home for you, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. And if you need more guidance on self-love and growth, hit that subscribe button. You're not alone in this. Until next time, take care of yourself. You're worth it.